Hello, everybody. It's Jodi, and I am going to demonstrate a card for you that I did at a team event this past weekend, and I used the Layered Stripes background stamp. So this is a big, giant background stamp. Like you can see, it's the size of a card front. It's huge. And you can find it in my online store, of course, but if you have our new mini catalog, you'll see it on page 28 down here at the bottom. And you can see in the catalog, they show some samples over here, coloring with different colors, with markers on the actual stripes on the stamp itself. And then stamping. This one uses the full background image here. And so I wanted to show you what I decided to do with this card. I started and I wanted to use the whole image just to do a background, but I wanted to emboss it, to heat emboss it with gold embossing powder. And it was just way too much. It was just overwhelming. So then I got the idea to take my stamp. I'm going to add some Versamark ink. And Versamark ink, if you're not familiar with it, it does like a watermark, like a tone on tone. Actually, let me just, this isn't part of it, but I'll just show you this quickly. If I was to put this layer of Calypso Coral on and just kind of rub the ink on this way, you'll see that it does a tone on tone. So it looks as though it's Calypso Coral ink on Calypso Coral cardstock. Any color that I do that on, it's just going to have that same effect where it's a watermark. For my project today, I'm going to ink this up. I'm just doing the edge very intentionally because I'm only going to use that small part. And then I have this strip of basic white cardstock. This is a little embossing buddy. It's a newer tool that we have, and I'm just rubbing that across the cardstock. What that does is it takes the static off of the paper, and so when I'm embossing, I'm not going to get these weird spots where the embossing powder sticks. Now I can rub my hand across it like this. I can also just kind of flip up my scrap paper and rub like this, and then my fingers won't get inky at all either. So now you can kind of see, even though it's white, so tone on tone isn't super dynamic, but you can see that diagonal image there. Now I'm going to pull in my little powder pal tray and my gold embossing powder. And what I want to do is just sprinkle my powder over the cardstock and let the excess fall into this tray. So the powder pal tray and the embossing buddy are products that we had, oh my gosh, years and years and years and years ago. And they retired them and they just came back this fall. So I was super excited about that because, to be honest, I've been using mine the whole time because they're so great. So you'll want to make sure if you do heat embossing that you have, I think I just, there. If you do heat embossing, you want to make sure that you have the embossing toolkit, which includes the powder pal tray, the embossing buddy. There's some long tweezers and then a little brush that you can use, because how this powder pal works is that you tap it all down and then there's this little plug here. And so I can grab my container from the gold embossing powder, kind of tap it down and then unplug it and pour it right back in so that I can use it next time. So I would take more time with the brush and make sure I get all the little pieces out. But for right now, I just wanted to show you how that works. So now I intentionally cut this piece long because it gives me a spot to hold on while I'm doing my heat embossing. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Stampin' Up! Heat tool. And this is what I use to melt this powder. Now I'm hoping that you'll be able to see once it starts melting. Do you see it going? I have done heat embossing so many times over the last 22 years with Stampin' Up! And I love it every single time. It's like fascinating every single time just to watch that change. Let me try to do it. Let me hold this differently and try to do it from the bottom a little bit and see. I'm just trying to see how it shows on the camera. if it's any better. I'm not sure that it does. I'll stick with doing it from the top. I think you could see as I move. Once it melts, I definitely want to keep the heat moving. If you leave it on the same spot too long after it's melted, it will, it'll kind of scorch it. And instead of being nice and glossy like this, it would just have like a dull finish. So once you've got that melted, you want to just keep the heat moving. So if you haven't tried heat embossing, I would definitely encourage you to do that because it is so, so fun. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me gauge over here. I'm just going to take my scissors and chop about this much off. Again, I had all of this just so I had a spot to hold onto. Now I am going to take one of my favorite tools, a blending brush, and I'm going to use Pale Papaya ink first, followed by Calypso Coral ink. So I'm going to take Pale Papaya and just pick up some ink and then blend it right over the embossed cardstock. You can see I'm just kind of using a circular motion. The more I go over it, the darker it will be. It's entirely up to you how dark you want this to be. Okay, then I'm going to add, I'm going to do just a little bit more down here. Then I'm going to add some Calypso Coral. Now I very intentionally started with Pale Papaya because it's lighter, and now I'm going to Calypso Coral. This one's darker. So, and notice too, you can start off of the scrap paper or on the scrap paper rather, and then pull the color in. Sometimes if you tap it on your ink pad and go right here, it's going to give you something that looks like that. You know, if you're tapping and then you go like that right on here and start blending, and then you've kind of got that shape to deal with. So I usually start like this and then start off on the scrap paper off of my project and then pull it in. And again, as dark as you want it, just keep going over and over to add more color. So I'm going to kind of give it that ombre look where it goes from a dark to a light. And it's going to be different every single time you do it. There's no right or wrong. I'm going to close Pale Papaya. I'm going to use Calypso one more time. Okay, so this is my strip. Remember, it was basic white, embossed with gold powder, and then I sponged on Pale Papaya and Calypso Coral ink. Now, a couple of different options. So let me pull in a card base that is Pale Papaya, and then a layer to go on the front that is Calypso Coral. So this is that one I stamped. I'm just going to put that side down so you can see what that would look like. Now, to create my card, I'm going to layer this piece on here. So excuse me, what I want to show you is the different look you can get by doing one more simple thing. And that's taking this layer of Calypso Coral, my blending brush once more, and the Calypso Coral ink, and just adding a little bit of ink, just tone on tone. So just putting some Calypso Coral on the Calypso Coral cardstock. And it just adds a little subtle difference that I really like. So I'm going to put it on this one, and I'm not doing the whole thing. I did some up here, some here, and down here. So almost like a triangular shape, I guess, of darker sponged color. So can you see that? Do you see up here, here, and here? It's got some shading from the Calypso Coral ink. So what I want to do, let me close this just so I don't make a mess. What I want to do is compare this for you. So if I put this here and then added my piece, it will look like that. But what if I just left it? Because maybe, you know, I added that ink, but it wasn't a super obvious difference. When you set them side by side, though, I think you can see it. And it's probably, I love this fancy grid paper, but it might even be changing the look a little bit because of that pink in the background. But you can see what this looks like just on the plain Calypso coral versus the Calypso coral that's sponged. Like I said, just a little subtle difference, but I really like what this brings to it. So all I would need to do then is go ahead and attach my layer. And then I also added a greeting and a few of the champagne rhinestones. And there is the finished project. I just had so much fun with this. So you can use this big giant background image as a big giant background, but you can also take just a 1-inch portion of it and really add something special to your cards, especially when you heat emboss it. So if you haven't tried heat embossing, definitely give that a shot and check out our embossing toolkit with the powder pail, the embossing buddy, the tweezers, and the brush. Super helpful when you are doing heat embossing. All right, that's what I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.